This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Place to Be Nation, welcome to another edition of the movie review of the day here on the Pop Experience. I'm Steve Riddle, back again for another go-around, and today I'm continuing my journey through the films of one Mr. Dom DeLuise. We, of course, have covered three films to this point: The Secret of NIMH, An American Tail, and The Land Before Time, all really good films, and now we're continuing that as we're about to hit the last film of the 80s for Mr. DeLuise, and a film that's definitely an interesting one. When you look at it, it's you kind of realize it's a lot darker than it probably should be, and kind of surprising that I managed to still snag a G rating, given some of the content in it. But that film that we're going to be talking about is All Dogs Go to Heaven. This is released on November 17th, 1989. Budget $13 million, box office $27.1, so not too bad. A little small, but at least in the green at least. Starring Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, Judith Barsi, Vic Tayback, Charles Nelson Reilly, Loni Anderson, among others. It tells the story of a dog who is double crossed by his partner. And is killed and goes to heaven, but he ends up returning and tries to get revenge on his former partner, while also befriending an orphan girl and she helps him gain some wealth because she has the ability to talk to animals. So, as we usually do, I will go ahead and start off with the three things that worked and three things that didn't work. So, three things that worked. And number one, I do like how they play into the concept of the fact that that because dogs are inherently good, loyal, and they immediately are granted entry into heaven. Because as you see, Charlie, our main dog, has done nothing right in his life. He's he's a shady businessman, along with his partner Carface, and even though he's been double crossed by Carface repeatedly, first by being sent to the pound, and then, as we see, eventually killed, he still has managed to gain access into heaven, when he clearly doesn't deserve it. But as we see, I should say, we do get the his redemption story, obviously, throughout the film, as he he finds Anne-Marie, and he wants to use her to eventually make money, but then he kind of realizes that he's getting a soft spot for her, despite his even to the dismay of his partner, of his friend Itchy, and eventually, as we see in the climax, he sacrifices his life for Anne-Marie, and that eventually gains him passage back into heaven. So again, it was a pretty good arc there for Charlie, to get him from being where he's only cares about himself, to eventually sacrificing himself to save Anne-Marie. So I thought that was a good little story there. Number two, on the surface, you think this wouldn't work as a musical film, because like I said, there's a lot of stuff in here that you would not usually find in an animated film. There's gambling, drinking, smoking, violence, some pretty dark stuff in there. And to kind of have I think putting the songs in there kind of gives it a little bit of lightheartedness to it, so that it's still kind of good for kids. And again, on the surface, it doesn't seem like it would work, but it actually does. So I do have to give Dom DeLuise a lot of credit for making the song, making it seem like the songs aren't in there just to kind of fill time, but they actually do fit within the film, and that they work within the film. So I will, I gotta give him a lot of credit for that. Excuse me. And number three, the idea of the the King Gator, being able to be, he can, when Anne-Marie and Charlie fall into the little like deaths there, and they get captured by these rats who tend to sacrifice them to the King Gator, but because Charlie ends up howling in Gator's mouth, that ends, Gator is like, oh, you sing, and I sing too, and let's be friends. And, it's an interesting dynamic, but I think it actually it did work, because as we see, the Gator ends up saving Charlie, and at the end there, from Carface. And again, it's one of those things where it seems like a convenient place, but I mean, obviously they are in New Orleans, so having a Gator there definitely helps. And I mentioned this when we did The Princess and the Frog for Pop Goes the Classics, that Louis in that film, I feel like, took a little bit of inspiration, was given inspiration from King Gator here. So I thought that was a nice little touch. So. And now we'll move on to the three things that didn't work. And number one, the fact that this film actually was going to be a lot darker. That would have been an interesting decision to take, because apparently there's the scene where Charlie has the nightmare, where he's basically in hell. Apparently that was supposed to be longer, but a couple of the minutes, but some time got cut because they thought it was too dark for kids. And Don Bluth had actually teased the idea of maybe doing like a director's cut with those scenes intact, but unfortunately the 35 millimeter film he had of with all those scenes attached got stolen, so we never end up getting that director's cut, which is again kind of unfortunate, because it would have been interesting to see what that scene would have looked like with the extra minutes attached to it, because as is, it's dark enough as it is. So and I could see the direction Don wanted to go with wanting to make it a little darker, but I think maybe that kind of did affect it overall in the end, because like we said, only 27.1 million box office, when his last two films were a lot bigger. And I think having the film be a little darker, it hurt it a little bit. So I think that kind of, backfired a little bit. Number two, I do kind of wish we got a little bit more in some of these other characters, like Flo, who it seems like she and Charlie have some kind of relationship together, but they don't really talk about it that much. I wish we had a little bit more with Harold and Kate, the couple that end up adopting Anne-Marie, and even Carface. I mean, we do get a little, get some point of him. We know him and Charlie were partners, and he tried to and he double crossed them, but we don't get that much else out of him, which I think is kind of unfortunate, because I think he could have been a really if they fleshed him out a little bit more, I think he could have been a pretty solid villain. I mean, as is, he's okay, but I think he could have been a little could have done a little bit better with him and some of these other characters. And number three, I don't know who made the decision to schedule the film to release when it did, because, like I said, this film came out on November 17th, 1989, and unfortunately for them, another animated film came out on that same date. It was Disney's newest release, and it was a film that happened to kick off one of the greatest periods in Disney history. Of course, that film being The Little Mermaid, and that period being the Disney Renaissance. So, a unfortunate, circumstance there for Bluth. I'm guessing they released it because they wanted to be counter-programming to The Little Mermaid. Because I mean, you compare the two. The Little Mermaid is very bright, very upbeat, and bright colors and everything. Whereas this one is a lot more dingy, a lot more darker, grungier, and they definitely try to, kind of counteract it. But as was, like I said, eventually, the Disney Renaissance would begin off of Little Mermaid. So we'll as we see Disney go up, we'll see over the next couple of years Don Bluth kind of go down, unfortunately. So, so there is that. And I thought there was something else I wanted to mention. And I do want to mention too, and kind of like just another note here, kind of similar to American Tail and Land Before Time. not sure we really needed a franchise out of this. I mean, we do get a sequel that came out in 1996. So again, kind of spending some time, kind of span, interesting span of time there for the two films. We also got a TV series out of it that was from the same year, 96 and 98, and then a Christmas film. So again, did we really need those? Maybe, maybe not. But I thought that was just wanted to kind of bring that up here. So now we'll go to my awards here, and now my MVP, and I want to really kind of make a note here. So of course, I mentioned in the previous film, The Land Before Time, about Judith Barsi, who of course voiced Ducky in that film, and she voices Anne-Marie here. Sadly, this would be her last film. Now, she had not done. She had only done a few films in her career. She did, like I said, these two. She also was in Jaws of Revenge, and she was in a film called Eye of the Tiger from '86. She was in a film called Slam Dance in '87. But that was pretty much it. And then she, did a lot of TV spots. But sadly, like I said, she, her personal life was in shambles because her father was apparently an alcoholic, and he was very he wasn't clearly in his right mind. And unfortunately, on July 28th, 1988, which was 3 days after she turned 10, and just to kind of put in perspective, was only a few days before I turned 3. She unfortunately, she and her family were found dead in their home. Reportedly, her father had killed her and her mother before killing himself. So, very unfortunate. And I know Dom DeLuise had really praised her for her work, and he said that if she had lived, he was intending to use her for future films. And you have to wonder, when we get to some of these of his upcoming films, if she would have the kind of role she played. I think there's one role in particular that I think she would have that I guarantee he would have put her in. So I'll get to that when we get there. But she is my MVP of the film. Again, she really brings a innocence to Anne-Marie that was really needed. I do want to give an honorable mention to Burt Reynolds for Charlie, for playing Charlie. You can definitely tell that role was written for him, because he, you can see a lot of his personality embedded in Charlie. And I want to quickly mention about so apparently he and Dom DeLuise, who plays Itchy, had done a couple of films together, and when they recorded their dialogue, they actually did it together, which is kind of uncommon at that point. Similar to, and also at the same time, and also Vic Tayback and Charles Nelson Reilly, who voiced Carface and Killer, did the same thing. So I thought that was kind of a nice little touch there. And one more note about Reynolds is that apparently when he was recording his the lines for when Charlie says goodbye to Anne-Marie at the very end, he was having he had to do multiple takes because he couldn't, because he was having a hard time, recording them without tearing up, because apparently he had because this was after she had died, and he apparently had a photograph of her while he was doing these lines, and he was having trouble, he kept tearing up while he was recording it. So thought that was, I just kind of wanted to bring that up there. But like I said, Judith Barsi is my MVP. My favorite character, I would probably say would be Itchy. He's kind of a very, he's very anxious, paranoid. He always itches when he gets nervous, and it takes a while for him to really warm up to Anne-Marie, because at one point, he thinks Charlie's gone soft on him after he gets assaulted by Carface and his goons, and and Charlie tries tell him that that he does care about him, and that he's even willing to dump Anne-Marie off in an orphanage, before only to find out that Anne-Marie had listened to had heard them, and then that leads to the final climax. But Itchy is my favorite character. My least favorite character, I think it had to be Annabelle, the angel that meets Charlie when he first arrives in heaven. She can be a tad bit annoying, and I can see why Charlie wanted to maybe get out of there, especially if he had to deal with her. We do end up again a little bit there at the end there, where after Carface then shows up in heaven, after getting apparently devoured by the gator, and again that inherent notion that all dogs go to heaven, he immediately gets to heaven because he has no right to be there, and then he tries to do the same thing Charlie did by winding up his clock and going back to heaven, and she kind of chastises and chases him out for it. So, but again, I think again just. We don't see her much throughout the film, but the little point we did see her, I thought, kind of unnecessary. And my favorite scene, I would have to say, it's definitely when they're at the horse race and when the great Chahi ends up winning. Which you look at him, you think he's not going to win, but because that day happens to be his birthday, all the other horses basically give it to him. And again, the innocence of Anne-Marie, where she thinks that Chahi won because it's his birthday, not knowing that the other horses basically threw it for him. So, I thought that was my favorite scene, and then my favorite song, because when I do musical movies, I'll choose my favorite song. There's a couple, like I said, there's some good songs in there. You Can't Keep a Good Dog Down. You got Let Me Be Surprised, and I'll give again Burt Reynolds this for him singing, because he's not really the best singer, but he does do he's good in that role. And then they do have. They don't have Judith Barsi sing when Anne-Marie sings "Soon You'll Come Home." They have Lana Beeson sing, and I also mentioned "Love Survives," which was actually written in dedication to Barsi. I thought that was a nice song, but my favorite song, I think, is "What's Mine Is Yours" when Charlie sings to the puppies. I think that's a nice little song there, and again, kind of shows that he does have some people that he cares about. Which you wouldn't think at first. So, and then my final grade. So, like I said, I've been keeping track of all the grading because I'm going to do a final ranking of all the Don Bluth films when I'm done here. So, to this point, I gave Secret of NIMH 8 out of 10, American Tail 9.5 out of 10, and The Land Before Time a 9 out of 10. And for this film, I'm going to go 8 out of 10 as well. I think it is a good film. I don't think it holds up as well as the other two films did, but it does have its charm to it. And again, even though it is a little bit darker than some of the other films we've seen to this point, I think there is still some some good parts of it. And I think it does deserve a good grade here. So 8 out of 10. So currently it stands tied with The Secret of NIMH. So when I get to my rankings, I'll have to decide how to do a tiebreaker. But we still got some time before we get there. So. But with that's going to do it for me. Again, thank you for listening, and thank you for continuing to support us as we are, like I said, inching ever closer to 100 episodes. We still got a little ways to go before we get there, but we're getting there pretty quick. So again, continue to support us, and we will continue to provide the content on this feed and all of our other feeds. So we definitely appreciate all of it. So. With that, I am Steve Riddle. This has been the movie review of the day here on the Pop Experience, and we'll see you next time.